Good evening, everyone. I am your host, Brian Delory, and this is the Deception Watch Ministries broadcast. This is my first live broadcast on YouTube. I've never done one before, and I'm doing it completely extemporaneously. I don't have anything in front of me to refer to, and this topic that really garners a lot of attention because people want to know what the answer is and it's the truth about ghosts. A lot of people believe that ghosts are real, and of course you see all over the TV. There's different programs, ghost hunters, sightings, whatever it has to be. There are various TV programs devoted to these subjects. And if you listen to these programs, you walk away with the idea that these things are true, that is such a thing as ghosts. There is no such thing as ghosts, and I'll get to that in a moment. It's not ghosts you're dealing with in these situations. It's demon spirits you're dealing with in these situations. And people have a tendency to be deceived about this. And there's a divergence of opinion on it, and I'm not going to go into all that tonight. But suffice it to say, you're dealing with forces that are malevolent, and they're attempting to deceive you through these types of programs. Because when you see these programs and you see the things that they show you, you begin to think, maybe there is such a thing as ghosts. No, there is no such thing as ghosts. The Bible's clear on that. And the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 8, it says that knowing that while we are at home in the body, I misspoke, that while we are at home in the body, we're absent from the Lord. And so that infers that if we're in the body, we're still alive and we're not with the Lord. But if after we have passed away, where are we going to be? We're going to be in heaven with the Lord. So that tells us that there is no in-between. There is no such a thing as soul sleep, or such a thing as spirits of departed human beings walking around on the earth, haunting their relatives and their friends. There's no such thing as that. When you die, you go to one of two places. It's either heaven or to hell. That's it. There is no other place to be. But people are deceived about this. I mean, as a kid coming up, I remember thinking that, and being told by different people, we all had a belief that, there was some form of an afterlife, and we believed that when people die, they go to an afterlife. Of course, in those days, I knew what the Bible said about heaven, that there was a heaven. I did not know what it said about hell, but I believed that there was an afterlife for all human beings. And so, you've heard people say when someone dies, they say, well, they went to a better place. That's not the truth. The only way they're going to go to a better place is if they're saved. If they're not saved, or if they don't know the Lord, then they're not going to go to a better place. They're going to go to a place that's infinitely worse than this place. But this is what most people believe. They don't believe the Bible, so they have their own ideas and things that have been passed around and circulated around through their entire life. I remember hearing from a young age. I was probably 5 when these things were first brought up to me by someone in my family. I don't remember who, but they just came up from time to time, and so you were just always raised with this idea that when people die, they go to someplace better. And in a lot of cases, like mine, because I was raised Catholic, I was led to believe that in some cases there were saints, dead saints, deceased saints you could pray to and get your prayers answered or get some type of help from them, secure some type of help from them while you were living on the earth. This is what I was taught. I remember distinctly one day I was in my mother's car and there was a little statue on the dashboard. And I said, "Mom, what's that statue?" She said, "Oh, that's the St. Christopher statue. He watches over people to prevent car accidents." Well, there is no such thing as that. Whoever St. Christopher is, I don't even know who he is. If he knew the Lord, when he died, he went to heaven. If he didn't know the Lord, he went to hell. There's no in between. There's nobody watching over you to prevent car accidents except for God through his holy angels. Nobody's watching out for you to prevent anything from happening to you except for God and his holy angels. Nobody's helping you from the other side. No such thing as that. Only God can help you. And there are times we know that it happens. People are allowed to depart this life at an early age through all kinds of ways. I mean, some people suddenly get sick and they die. Others are killed in car accidents. Others die from other types of mishaps, boating accidents, plane crashes, you name it. So the only one who's preventing that from happening to you is God. The only reason that it hasn't happened to you is because God wants you here. For example, when I was a child, I was 2 years of age, and it was the first day of school, and this, it probably wasn't quite 2 yet. But my sister and I were, she loved me to death, and so we spent a lot of time together. And there were these neighbors right in the back of our house, and the house is still there to this day. And we used to go over there almost every day during the summer. So I don't know what happened. My mother can't tell me what happened. I don't know what happened. I just know that somehow I wandered away from my house. And in those days, we had a fence, so I would have had to go out the front door or from somewhere to the street, walk down about 75 feet to the house next door, which was our neighbor, Mr. Romig, wander down through the path. So from the street to where I got to would have been approximately 500 feet. Give or take a little. I don't know how much. And it was a pool. We used to go over there every day. And so when my sister left that day, I didn't think anything about going to school. I thought she was over there. And I don't know what happened. I don't know how this happened without my mother knowing it. And so the next thing I know, and I remember this, I guess because it was such a traumatic experience for me, it really is clear in my mind to this day. And somehow I got in, because they had a fence around this pool, somehow I got into the fenced-in area. I don't know how I did that, because I don't remember there being a gate outside the fence. That's why. But if there was, I got into it that way, because that's the only way I could have gotten into it. I can still see myself, or not myself, I can still see looking up to the pool. I can see the water. I can see the silver bar that most pools have over the stairs. The silver bar, the rail, that you hold on to walk down the steps into the pool. And I could see that. And I do have a very faint remembrance of falling into the water. The next thing that I remember feeling is my arms being out, floating uh, up on both of my sides of my both sides of my body rather, and that's what I remember. And the next thing I remember is seeing a white dress come down into the pool. And after that, I have no memory of anything else. And what had happened was, of course, I had gotten into the pool area, fallen into the pool, but this young girl who was about the same age of my sister, so she would have been about 13. My sister's 12 years older than me. She had come home because she'd forgotten a pencil. Now, who do you suppose allowed that to happen? So, to make a long story short, she saved me. She pulled me out of the pool, and after that, I was completely traumatized about being anywhere near water. I just couldn't deal with that anymore, and so it took me a long time to get over it. My mother actually sent me to swimming school to break my fear of the water. And after I was about 6 years of age, I no longer feared the water the way I did between the ages of 2 and 5. And what do you think happened, though? I mean, was that some saint watching me over? Watching over me, or was that God and His angels? Well, if you are a Christian and you live according to a biblical worldview, then you know that it was God. You believe that it was God. The Bible tells you that God watches over you, that angels watch over you. What about when Paul went to sail to Rome? Paul was sailing to Rome, and he was on this ship. He was sent. He was going to go to appeal to Caesar. So he was sent over on this ship, and at first, when they first set off on their journey, the weather conditions seems to be favorable for them. But Paul had perceived that some calamity was going to occur, and they didn't believe him, and they continued on. And what happened is they ended up being caught in the middle of what is the equivalent of a subtropical storm in the ocean. And they were in that storm for 2 weeks. And do you think that it was some saint, the spirit of some saint watching over them? Or do you think it was God and angels watching over them? Well, of course, if you have a biblical worldview, you believe it was God and His angels watching over them. And to make a long story short there, they wound up running aground on some island, and they all left the ship. It was a ship of prisoners. Paul was a prisoner, and the others were prisoners. And God had appeared to Paul in the middle of the night. He was praying, obviously, as you might imagine. That was a very bad experience. And the angels of God appeared to him, and they told him exactly what needed to be done, and that all lives on the ship would be saved. And so Paul listened to what the angels said, and then he communicated that to the captain of the ship and the steward of the ship. And later that night, they sounded their I don't really know what instrument this is, but they sounded, and they knew they were near land. And to make a long story short, they ran aground on this island, and they had to wait until daylight, and then they all left the ship, and the ship was totally destroyed. And so we know from what the Bible says that it was God and the angels who were watching over this situation and prevented anyone from being lost. So that's usually what happens. That's my cat. If you heard that, that's my cat. He's saying blessings to you all. Anyway, so, but it was no ghost. There was no spirit of the deceased saint watching over Paul and the prisoners. It was God and angels. But to get back to the ghost aspect of this, what you need to be aware of is that the Bible tells us that when it talks about communicating with the dead, that they are familiar spirits, and what they're doing is deceiving you. They take on the appearance of your dead family member or maybe somebody else, or whoever it is, and you start embracing that and communicating with it, and then you're opening your lives to them. How many times have you watched one of these programs I referred to at the beginning of the broadcast, where people say that, they have a ghost in their house and whatever, and the next thing you know, they're waking up being scratched and bitten and so forth. Why do you think that happens? Well, first of all, it happens to people who don't know the Lord. It also the people who are ignorant of these things, and so things happen, and then it graduates from, I don't know, an apparition, noises, you name it, and then the next thing you know, this being bitten, being scratched, and all other types of harassment. Why do you think that is? Do you think that's because it's a godly spirit? Do you know of any human spirits that would act like that? Of course you don't. It's because it's demons. Demons are masquerading as dead people, and people are falling for it and accepting that as being reality when it is not reality. And so that's what I really wanted you all to know tonight, because this is very dangerous stuff, and you need to stay away from it. Because if you get involved with that, if you embrace it, you're opening your life up to all kinds of devastation like you could not possibly imagine. And I'm not going to go into the particulars of that for the sake of time, but suffice it to say, it does happen, and you need to be aware of that, and you need to be aware of what it is and who it is. It's not ghosts. It's not the spirits of dead people you're dealing with. It's the spirits of demons who are masquerading as the dead for the purposes of deceiving you and getting you to embrace this stuff and having an inroad into your life, and also to lead you away from God and everything that you know to be true. Even if you're not a Christian, the Bible tells us that most of us know that there is such a thing as God. I forget which chapter of Romans, but it says that they know his power and his Godhead, so that they are without excuse. So again, this is something you need to be aware of, and I just wanted to share all these things with you. This, as I said before, is my debut broadcast, and a lot of people are going to hear this and tune in, and I'm hoping that what you're hearing tonight is a blessing to you. And I realize I wasn't as polished as some are, but again, give me a little break, because this was my first video broadcast, live video broadcast on YouTube. And so that's going to do it for today. And I want to tell you that I have a website for this program, which is entitled Deception Watch. It's deceptionwatch.org. You can go there. I have a lot of material already posted up there. And you'll find what's posted there to be a blessing. There's some articles as well as some videos, and also some podcasts that I've recently done, which are on my YouTube channel, Apostasy Warning Radio. So again, that's going to do it for today. And I do this on my audio broadcast all the time, my podcast, and I say this: keep the faith and defend the truth. And so that's what I want you to do. Keep the faith and defend the truth, and I will return. Have a good night, everybody. It's not letting me say goodbye. Goodbye, everybody.